All right. Welcome everyone to Webinar Wednesday. This is one of my favorite things to do in a month because it gives me an opportunity to walk you through training, gives me an opportunity to recommend different programs and things that we're working on. And it also gives me a kind of opportunity to answer your questions. I know some of you watch this when we broadcast them live. Some of us join in on our Zoom session where I love to make that more of an interactive session. But however you're getting the information or accessing this, I really hope that not only today's training or future training are really something that can help make a kind of substantial change in your business and change in the way that you are running your business. So let's talk about today's topic. Let's talk about what are we going to hone in on today? And the big thing that I want to hone in on today is what I kind of call the missing fundamentals. For many of us in our business, there are things that we've either put in place, and when we put them in place, we were moving fast, we were trying to get it done. And when we got it done, we just moved on. But those process and systems are not really built for growth. Those process or systems are not really built for volume, or they're really not built to be easily managed, especially maybe if you're a solopreneur. And what we have to do at some point in our business is do an assessment, get a sense of where do we spend our time? What are we working on? What's eating up our time? What are those things that are creating this kind of rework? And how do we fix that? Now, this isn't the most exciting thing sometimes to do because it feels like it's not the creation side of things. Or sometimes it can feel like you're in your business or behind your business, and it will feel like, oh, I want to do that fun stuff where I'm talking to customers and helping customers. But the reality is, these fundamentals impact your customers. These fundamentals can have a huge impact on how easy it is for you to get transformations for your customers and your clients. So the more you focus in on these things, and maybe you're not doing them on a daily basis, but this is something you do an assessment on a few times a year, what you can do is really help more people. You can help them more efficiently. And especially if you're a business of one, this is going to be really, really important because your time's limited. And we have to make sure that we have the right systems and things in place to make your business sustainable. Now, whether this is the first time you're joining me on a webinar or you've been on a couple, and as always, I love recognizing, faces I've seen before. The idea is that this is something I'm very passionate about. This is something I love, love, love talking about: how to run a business, how to build a successful business, and how to do it kind of in this vegan landscape. Whether you're doing a product that feels very directly related, like food, or if you're a coach or a trainer, you do classes, maybe help people with, spiritual health. It really doesn't kind of matter where you are in this space. The idea is we're all kind of working together to not only kind of take the movement forward, but what we're also trying to do is help the world, help individuals. And being in those service-based businesses, I think it's very key that that's where we can make some of the, greatest kind of growth and support for people. And that's why I'm hoping through these webinars, we're able to, help you do more of what you do best. So when we talk about missing fundamentals, the first question is going to come up is like, where are the gaps? Where are the problems? What's really going wrong? What's not working in your business? And for some of us, we could just sit and do a long list of what about this? And this is a problem. And this I don't know. And this I don't have. And I think that is something that needs to be done. But what we want to do is do it in a constructive way. We want to find a way to say, okay, well, what's the landscape of what I'm doing? What's happening? And what I'm going to recommend is kind of your first stop, your first way to get a handle on your fundamentals, get a handle on what's working in your business, what's working for you, is to take an inventory of where do you spend your time. Now, keep in mind, this webinar is recorded. So at any point in time, you have to come back to any slides, you can, or you can take a quick picture of it. I don't mind either way. But the thought is, have you done like an inventory of where you spend your time? Now, this list is like 10 things. This list is pretty big. For some of you, you're like, oh, this might be overwhelming. Cut it back to 5. All I want you to do is start to get a sense of what are you doing in your business on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or daily basis that eats up a good amount of your time, and start to write those things down. Now, I don't want an exhaustive list. I don't want 50 items on this list. 10, I would say, is the max. But if you want to start with something small, start with 5. What I did here is I always love to show you real stuff. So this is what I spend my time on. This is what I do. This is my top 10. Your top 10 may not be the same. It may look completely different. But what I want you to do is kind of think that through. Now, these are not in number of priority. I just listed the 10 so you could clearly see them. And you can see what I did is I just kind of wrote them as they came out. So I just started writing them, writing them, writing them. And then as I look through it, I was like, oh, some that I have lower in the list, I do more than things that I have higher in the list. Now, one thing to break this down, when you think about how you're spending your time, what I want you to think about is what are you doing and how many times per week? What are you doing? How many times per month? What are you doing? Is it something you do daily? And just keep it that simple at first. So, for example, for me, I do a lot of discovery calls, probably do between 2 or 3 of them a week. The reason I document that is when I start to say, am I missing a fundamental? Do I have a broken process? Do I have something that can be fixed? When I start to understand how much of my time is allocated to something, I can prioritize because I may say, yes, these are all 10 things I want to get done, but something I'm doing 4 to 5 times per week, something I'm doing daily, I'm probably going to want to focus on that first. So therefore, when I'm starting to say, where do I focus? Where are the problems? Where are the issues? What I'm most likely going to do is say, okay, in my list, I'm doing a lot of client prospect and tracking, 4 to 15, excuse me, per week. Okay, number 7, number 9, and number 10. Those are probably my next highest on a weekly basis. I have a lot of coaching sessions every week. And that means I have an hour to an hour and a half session every week with different clients. Because of that, I do a lot of planning and notes. That's on top of the session itself. And then workflow and task. This is just, things that I have to get done in my business. So what this does for me and what I hope it does for you is by listing this out, you can say, okay, where do I want to focus? Maybe on number 3. And then from there, I'll focus on number 7, 9, or 10. And now you can start to identify, hey, this is where I'm spending my time. If I did an assessment of it, is there an opportunity for me to make changes? Is there an opportunity for me to make things better? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Does this feel too intimidating? Feel like, oh my goodness, or does this feel like I can put this together? Okay. All right. Now mine are in a business that's fairly established. I've been doing this for a while. For some of you that are new, your list may be different. The things you're working on is just setting up your social media accounts. The things that maybe you're working on are the financials, the paperwork. I'm filing for an LLC. I'm getting my bank account set up. I'm working on all these little things that it's just my setup. Put your setup in there. If you're in the beginning stages of your business and you're working on your offer, or you're working on brochures or materials that you're going to use for marketing, put those things in here. This may change, meaning when I look at this right now and I talk about how many times a week I have client meetings, 6 months from now, I may have a completely different client mix. So therefore, where I'm spending my time may be a little bit different. Plus, fingers crossed, where I spend my time will change 6 months from now because I've fixed some things. I've made it more efficient. So yes, I may still have a lot of coaching sessions, but it may not eat up as much of my week because I've put new processes in place to make it better, to make it so that I have more capacity to do more. Okay. All right. So that's stage 1. All right. Now, many of you may be like, okay, I get that. I'll get to that project. But what can I do now? What are some of just give me some steps to do right now. So I'm going to walk through a couple of them. I'm going to keep it kind of light because I just want to give you a couple of things to, I guess, inspire you today. And then what we'll do is I'll jump into the Zoom session and then I'll ask you specifically if there is something you're struggling with, we can talk about it. Now, if you want to drop it in the chat earlier to say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, Steph. This is what's eating up my time. This is where I feel like I have a missing kind of piece. Drop that in the chat because then I can definitely make sure I address it and I make sure I address it for you. Okay. Now, one of my favorite places to start when I think about a fundamental in our business, when I think about one of the things that can hinder us from growth, can hinder us from getting services done at a timely basis, and a process that can almost wear us down is schedule management. Time management is another way to say it. Now, I know when we all talk about time management, we have all these different processes and things that we can do. And I do support a lot of those things. But one of the number one things that I've seen work best for people moving forward so that you can get a better handle on your day, better handle on those tasks we were talking about earlier, those 1 through 10, and a way to structure your business so it doesn't overwhelm you is to set up a true weekly schedule. Now, I'm just curious in the chat, how many people have a weekly schedule? And what I mean by a weekly schedule, meaning instead of your days just being weeks of things to get done, like you just start on Monday and start checking an email, you just start doing things like that. You have a sense of what you're going to do on each day, meaning what are days kind of dedicated to. And then within that day, what's your kind of like morning routine, whether it's a little personal stuff. And then what do you do for a morning routine from a business standpoint? And then how does your day flow? Now, for some of us, we're just in reactionary mode. We're people that kind of just, if an email comes in, if someone gives us a phone call, if this happens, we're just like responding. And that's a skill you need. You have to be flexible enough to do that. But what you also need is you need a schedule that helps you get things done. Because the challenge is getting through email doesn't always propel your business forward. It doesn't mean that you're getting new clients. Getting through and responding to comments on social media. We all want to do those. People take the time to put a comment out there. It's like, okay, let me take the time to respond. But the challenge is getting through all those comments may not necessarily mean you got that proposal out on time. It doesn't necessarily mean that you got those emails out because you're looking at doing the employee wellness program. It doesn't necessarily mean that you worked on that new course that you've been trying to launch for the last 2 or 3 months and you didn't just get to it. So what I like to do is break up my day into a target for that day. Okay, perfect. I'm seeing some comments here, having a good personal morning routine, which I think is so critical. We don't have time in today's session to talk about that unless, it comes up later. But having a morning routine is huge because if you don't start your day with a very positive morning session, what happens is often, you kind of can feel like you're just dragged through work the entire week. Like you're not doing anything to replenish, to rejuvenate and so forth. Let's see, a couple of things about scheduling appointments. Good. Love seeing that. Having some loose schedules. Okay, perfect. All right. So 3 of the things I'm going to give you is the fundamental in how we do schedule management or how I recommend it is picking a day for specific things. For me, I do a lot of coaching and consulting. I don't do coaching and consulting 7 days a week. It's too much. I tried it, drove me crazy. It made me exhausted. And also I had to be like on at a certain energy level all the time. And that was a lot for me. I need days where I can plan. I need days where I can focus. I need days where I can be creative as opposed to being, on the spot responsive to clients. That's a different kind of skill. And what I found is if I could break up some of those days, then I could be optimal on the days that require me to have different skills. So Monday, I call my grind day. Monday for me, no meetings. Monday is my day to get work done, prepare for the week. I might be working on agendas for meetings I have that week. I might be sending notes to my team on things or projects I want them to complete. I may go on my project management tool and work on that, as well as I'll go in on my grind day and physically work on a project. If I have to send out proposals, if I have to set up Zaps, if I have to write emails, all those things happen on my Monday outside of client meetings, outside of other things that I have going on. Okay. And then for me, my Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are consult days. Now I'm showing you an example here. This is good for people who do cooking classes. I'm explaining mine as a coach, just so you can see there's variation and differences depending on what you have going on. The other thing that you can do is you can have, so example here, like my consult days would be the equivalent of meeting days, Tuesdays and Thursdays you see here. For me, my meeting or consult days and coaching days are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Maybe someone who does a little bit of coaching and a little bit of cooking classes, you have 2 days designated for classes, a weekend day, a weekday day. And then you have 2 days for meeting for your coaching. And this is how your day is organized. It doesn't mean you don't do anything else on those other days. It just means they're blocked off in your calendar. And when you get prepared that day, whatever your morning kind of routine is, that morning routine is preparing you for that type of day. It's preparing you for a meeting day. When I need to be in creative zone, I want to do different things when I need to be creative versus different things when I need to be high energy day. All right. The other thing I love to do is have a flex day. Friday's my flex day because the reality is when you work for yourself, you almost feel like you never have time for personal stuff. So Friday's my day where I get my teeth cleaned, I go to the doctors, I pick up things that need to happen during the week, phone calls I need to make. So it could be a day I work a little bit, but I normally kind of reserve it for a day that I get personal things done. And that way it has a day that can flex either way. Or if you need some time off, Friday can be your time off day. Okay. Now, flex day, free day, totally different things. You do need it one day of the week you do not work. I am so adamant about this. But not everyone's going to listen to me. But maybe you'll come back and be like, yeah, I get it now. And I'm not saying that I listened too. I did it. I worked all the time. I had meetings on the weekends. It was crazy. Not only did my family not respond well to that, it just made me exhausted, tired, and eventually sometimes irritable because I always felt like I was pulled in a million directions. So think about what that day may be. For other people, it may be a totally different day. Maybe you have young kids. Maybe you're caring for a parent. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways the schedule is going to work out. But to me, this is one of those big fundamentals that if you can get a handle on your day and a handle on your week, you can get more done. You can even work less because you'll have less distractions and you'll have time to eat. You'll have time to do things that we all should be doing, but we don't do because you're starting to look at your schedule and say, these things are important and I'm going to make time for them to get done. Make sense? All right. Let's talk about number 2 on the list. Number 2 on the list is when you're looking at your fundamentals, when you're trying to figure out what to fix, what to tweak, what to change in your business, how to drive that stability, you have to focus on 2 places. Number 1 place is how do you get new customers or how do you do fulfillment? Now, fulfillment sounds like a very technical word, and I also needed a short word I could put on the slide. But what I really mean when I say fulfillment, I mean how they get the service or product that you offer. So if you're selling t-shirts, selling books, you're selling vegan purses, shoes, what does that process look like and how does it work? And what you can do is focus on that process to say, how can I make it better? That's one way to do it. Or I'm showing you the example here is how do you acquire customers? Whether it's a product or service, same idea. What is that process? What is the thing that you repeatedly do that help you get customers? And I'm showing you an example of what I do because I always love to show you examples of real stuff, not just theory of what I recommend. So one way that we get customers, if you're in a coaching business, if you're in really coaching, consulting, any of those types of businesses, a very common way to get customers is you do some type of speaking engagement, meaning you're in front of an audience. Then you send that audience to something that allows them to book like a discovery call. And then from that discovery call, depending on what happens in that discovery call, you might send out a proposal, or you might send them to a sales page, or you might send them a link to sign up for your course and so forth. Okay. Now this will look different if you have a physical product. You might do this differently, for a physical product. Or when I say speaking engagement, that's a wide range of things. Webinars that I do, they're technically a tool for people to get to know me and see me. I have a lot of people that go to webinars. That is the first time they've ever heard of me and they come to a webinar to check me out. And that is a customer kind of acquisition tool for me. Some people are going to hear me speak. I'm going to do maybe a training session for a program that they've signed up for. And when they hear me speak, at the end of that, I get discovery calls every single time. Anytime I speak at especially training sessions, I may walk away with 4 to 10 discovery calls after that. When I do podcast interviews, when I get on stage and present, often as a follow up, I'm always going to see discovery calls. So, therefore, because I know I spend a lot of time in discovery calls, like we talked about earlier, I had it like as 2 to 3 per week. And because I know if I do more webinars, do more interviews, do more articles, do all these things and increase them, what happens is to work on a fundamental, to fix my business, to make it better, to make it more efficient, this becomes an ideal process for me. And what it does is it tells me that either in how I do my speaking engagements, either how I do my booking for discovery calls, or how I do my sales, these are 3 places I can focus to make my business run better. But to do this, you have to spend a little bit of time getting this on paper. And we'll talk about that even more in the next step where I talk about documentation. But why this becomes a fundamental for many of you is what I find when I'm working on my business, making my business better, is when I start to write down what is happening, what am I doing, what are my 3 steps in the process, and what do I have. In this example, I have all these things in place finally. But when I first wrote this down, let's even say last year, let's take discovery call in the middle. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you an example. Let's just go to the next one. I'll show you a good example of it. You can visually see it. One or the other, and it'll link to the previous slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus here where it says discovery call right in the middle. Okay. And our discovery call process was a very basic process. People could click a link, sign up. When they signed up, sometimes I would send them a survey, we'd have a call, and then I'd send out notes. Basic process. But what I found is it wasn't working. I wasn't getting my meeting notes out. Sometimes I didn't know what people's business was about before I got on a call. There were all these gaps in it. So what I ended up doing is saying, okay, step 3 in the process when I'm trying to get a sustainable business is I had to document the process. I had to document what's even happening around my discovery calls. What do I do for my consulting? How do I do my coaching calls? So this is an example. Sorry, I thought I put the discovery call example in there, but I see I put the consulting one, but they work almost the same. What I ended up doing is I had to write down what was happening. I had to figure out what were some of my problems, which were tracking meeting notes, following up with customers, storing files. And then what I had to do is build a whole new process. Now, I know you can't see these boxes. I know they're teeny, 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 tiny. I'm not expecting you to see all these boxes. But what I want you to do is see the comparison between, you see in the bottom left corner, the number of orange boxes we had there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was my initial process. I had 5 steps in the process. And even if you look at above, I have like 1 through 7. Some of these are just the reminders in the process. What I realized is once I documented it down, I understood what some of the improvements I needed. I needed a bigger process. I was missing steps in the process. I didn't really think about the process. And what I'm going to show you is don't worry about the boxes underneath, and I can answer any of those questions if you have any later on. But what I found is I didn't break out the process correctly. I needed to say, what happens when someone's brand new? How do I prepare for these discovery calls? What happens when I have the call? And then what's a whole process after it? What's everything that happens? And then when I send my notes or send my information to someone, and then I sit in that pending stage. Now, the reality is you can probably see that this isn't the end of the process. There's way more to it. I just didn't want the boxes to get so tiny, they just look like white blurs. But what I want you to see here is how important it is to document, how important it is to get a sense, bless you, of what your process is and where your improvements can go. All right, let me take a quick stop there. Any questions so far? Okay, all right. Next thing we're going to talk about is when you're trying to get to these fundamentals, when you're trying to understand what's happening, is there's a level of documenting like process map, but there's another process where you have to think about workflow. And what many of us forget in our business is that there's process steps, but workflow is the status that something has to move through, especially for things that you do all the time. So, for example, if you're offering cooking classes 4 times a year, that is a process that you do all the time. And there's a consistent way you set that up. It's a consistent way that you create the flyers, consistent way that you create the registration page. There's a consistent way that you're going to send out emails after someone signs up so they get all their confirmation or their links or their Zoom links. That's one example. In this example, and I'm trying to mix it up and show you different processes we have so you can get a sense of it, we do a podcast. And to do a podcast, it sounds like, okay, well, you just interview a couple of people, record it, and publish it. And that's not what it's like. There's a ton of steps in the process. And what we found we had to do is list out all our processes. So you can see some of them here on the left-hand side. And we had to go through each one of these and say, what are the steps? Even if you are a business of one, even if it's just you in the business, you need to know what all these steps are in the process for 2 reasons. Number one, this is going to help you get visibility to where you're spending all your time and what's eating up your time. And then B, when you need help, often what we try to do is ship a whole process over to someone. They're like, podcast, headache, hire someone, give it to them, headache gone. But that's not true when you run a business. You're still responsible for everything. You still have the blowback of, well, steps were missed or someone didn't know how to do that. Or even if you hire someone and say you lose someone on your team, the next person that comes in, they have no idea how to do it because the person that left has all of that stuff stored in their brain. So instead, what I want you to start to do, even if it's just you, is start to think about what are the steps, what's happening, write those down. Eventually, one of the main things you're going to need in your business is a project management tool. I use a tool called ClickUp. Absolutely love it. This is a screenshot from it so you can see the statuses that we put up. I'm actually going to do some training on ClickUp. So if anyone's interested in project management, how we do it, what we set up, and all that good stuff, we're going to do it in one of our programs called Skills. And I'll explain that to you guys in the end. We're going to do some fun challenges around it. And the other reason you want to be able to do this is you can always get, thanks for the thumbs up. You can always make improvements once you know what these steps are. You can always identify, can I bring someone in to help me? And can I bring someone in even temporarily to make a process better? Because sometimes we don't have the budget to hire people. We don't have the budget to hire part-time, but we may have the budget for 3 months, for 2 months to hire someone and help them and have them come in and produce all your podcast. So if you have a process like this, say you're going to interview a whole bunch of people, you set up a process and say, okay, I'm going to send the invite. I'm going to send invites to people. When someone applies for my podcast, I'm going to review them. Once I review them, I approve them. Then I'm going to schedule them. This sounds like a lot of steps, but the reality is we've automated all of this. So we have an online form. Someone fills it out. When they do that online form, it goes into my project management system, creates a task for me and says, hey, Steph, review this. I read through it, hit a button, and then what happens is a person gets an email with a Calendly link. Then they go in and schedule for my podcast. Great. All right. Now that they've done that, it's time to write a description for the podcast. It creates a folder. I'll automate it. We schedule the podcast in our system and make sure all the dates are correct. And then I go into record. After I record, it goes to my team that helps us produce them. We edit show notes. We publish it. Then it goes to the site. Sounds fairly simple. And when I say fairly simple, meaning it sounds doable, but the way you can get efficiency, the way you can make it so things like a podcast or really anything you do is simpler, is what we ended up doing is bringing someone in to just do the produce section. So therefore, I may do all these other steps. And if you're doing a podcast, an example, you may interview 10 people. And then you hire a freelancer to go in and produce, which basically means they're going to do all the, sound editing, add an intro and outro, do all that stuff for you. But they do it on 10 podcasts. They do it on 12 podcasts. And once they've done all 12 of those, then you release them one a month. And guess what? You have your podcast done for the entire year because you've set up a process. You've actually figured out what are all the steps, and you figured out where can you batch to get things done, where can you get help, in that produce section to get things done. And then once it is all done, and especially when you think about it, just 12 interviews, which isn't crazy a lot of work, now you have a whole year's worth. Now, some people, a whole year's worth sounds like, ooh, okay, slow down. Then do 6 months. But the idea is use this as a way for you to start to get things under your belt. And you can do that much better when you know what your process is. Now, I know not everyone's doing a podcast, but I'm just showing you as an example. This works for anything and everything you do. It works for email marketing, discovery call, all of those things. And I can show you my processes for each one of those. And then the last one I want to go through, because I do want to make sure I have enough time. Yeah, I want this to go to that last one, because I do want to make sure we have enough time to answer your questions, is one of the ways to make sure you have what I call the fundamentals in place is making sure that when you create things in your business, you create leverageable assets. You create materials that can be reused. And for a lot of us, we'll do it in one place, but we don't pull it all the way through our business. And what I mean by that is we might set up a standard template for our proposals. And we're like, okay, I got to send out proposals, or I have to send out agreements. Okay, I'll get those done. But everything can be templated eventually in your business. And what I mean by that is we do these webinars. So in the bottom corner, that's a template that we use for all of our webinars. So every time I do a webinar, we already know what the layout is, design of it. I don't need necessarily creatively to think about what it's going to look like because I already have a template. All I have to do is drop the title in and put a photo that's relevant to it. Same thing happens for social media. We have like 5 to 10 different types of posts that we do. Let's say, for example, quotes. So anytime we do a quote, I have a quote template. And the quote template will have different photos of me in that quote template, but it's already laid out and designed that all I have to do is drop the quote in, drop a photo of me. Therefore, if I write 10 quotes, I have 10 templates for social media and I can share it. Same thing happens with email. If you're doing cooking classes, if you sell a physical product, if you are promoting kind of really anything, anytime someone signs up, they should get a standard email from you. They should get an email as a welcome email. And that's kind of an example. We have a new program that we're rolling out with Skills, and these are going to be our new welcome emails. And the idea is that every time someone signs up for our free program or our paid program, there's an email series that they get. It doesn't require me to email them every time one by one. I'm going to make sure that everyone gets 4 emails in a row that ensures they have the information they need to get the product and service. Now, it doesn't mean these are the only emails they're going to get. I'm still going to do some personal touch points. I'm still going to follow up with people. But as a standard, I want to put these things in place. When someone joins my email list, they always get a welcome email. That welcome email walks them through what we offer. What are some of our resources? What are some of our products? So when you think about sales, someone can join my email list, get 2 or 3 emails from me, click a link, sign up for a product, and actually buy without me even talking to them. Because what I've done is I've set a system up in place that people can do that. Now, some people are like, no, I want to talk to Stephanie before I buy anything. And that's fine with me. Everyone has a different way they like to buy. So in that same welcome email series, one of my emails is click this link to book a discovery call. So do you see how when I'm the work that you're doing, it all starts to build on each other? Because if I have my discovery call tight and works really well, then I can add a link to my discovery call to every interview I do. I can add a link to my welcome series for my discovery call because people can discover or get into a discovery call link. Anytime I do training at the end, I can say, hey, if you need extra help, jump on my website because you can sign up for a discovery call. And because I've set that process up, and then I have these leverageable assets, I am able to take a process I put in place and optimize it, get a ton out of it. But the idea is, it sounds great in the end. The hard part is like starting and where you want to be can be difficult. So when it comes to starting, just create the assets. Just figure out if someone joins my email list, what's email 1, 2, and 3 I want them to get? What information do they need to know? If someone is asking me for a proposal because I'm going to do, wellness training, or I'm going to go to their, I'm going to train their employees, or I'm going to come in and do a series of cooking classes. What document do they need? Because a proposal does not have to be written from scratch every time. A proposal can be 60 to 70% done. And for that specific client, your intro and your outro, meaning your first page and your final page, are all customized, but the middle is the same because the service is the same. It's just a question of, tweaking some of the pricing, 3 months, 6 months, things like that. Okay. And the more you have these leverageable assets, the easier it is to run your business, the easier it is to get things done, the easier it is for you to make sure you have the systems in place to make your business run faster. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I always have more slides that I want to cover, but I'm looking at time. And I want to make sure I answer your questions about what are some of the fundamentals? What are some of the things you're struggling with? What are some of the systems you wish you had in place, or the system that's not working for you? So this is your time to start thinking, time to start percolating, thinking about the questions you're going to ask me, because I'm going to come into our Zoom session and start answering questions. I'm going to start talking about what's going on in your world and what can I help you with. Now, everyone in my Zoom session, hang tight. I'm going to be over there in a second. I'm just going to say goodbye to our folks on social media. So anyone who's joined us on social media, first off, thank you for joining. So great to have you here. It's wonderful to get this opportunity to kind of walk you through things that you can do, whether they're quick hits, whether they're understanding the full picture, or whether it's just getting started. Like I said, finding a template that you can put in place, making sure your schedule, you have it under control, understanding what your processes are and identifying if they're missing steps in that process. That will allow you to get started. That will allow you to make sure you have some of these core things in place, because if you can get the fundamental things done that you do on a weekly and daily basis to be easier to do, more consistent to do, and faster, then you will be in a better position for growth. Now, if you have any follow-up questions from the webinar today, always shoot me an email at support@veganmainstream, or you can drop it in the comment no matter where you're watching this live session. So I'm just going to say goodbye to everyone here on our social media channel, and I'm going to go into our Zoom session for a more detailed Q&A. Bye, everyone.